about urbanism and stuff. I am your host, Alex Williams, and today I'm joined by three wonderful people. It's been a while since we've had a full house on the show, but I'll start with our guest here. We've got Reece Martin from RMTransit on the show here. Do you want to say hi, Reece, and maybe just quickly introduce yourself?
I'm Reece. I formerly made YouTube videos about public transportation on YouTube, and and I like cities and such and stuff, as you said, Alex.
And stuff,
There's so much stuff I like.
So much stuff, a variety of things, we might say. And we have a bunch of questions lined up for you. Some of our patrons knew that you were coming on, and they lined us up with some things they were curious about. But of course, I can't go ahead without introducing my two regular co-hosts, and that is Nick Laporte. Say hi.
Hi.
Welcome back onto the show. You're coming to us from a beautiful, different background. Makes me feel good about my setup. Every time Nick has a different setup because he's away, it makes me feel like I'm doing something right here. And Ethan Myers, welcome back.
Well, it's great to be back with everybody here, our wonderful guests, our wonderful patrons in the audience, and we're gonna have a good show for y'all today.
Yeah, we're gonna have a great show. It's gonna be a little bit tight, and we're gonna focus a little bit on these questions we've got from Reece. And I absolutely promise it's not because we came into the show with a lack of stories on our end. But maybe let's start it off with Nick. You've got some updates. Do you want to get us rolling?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's do that really quick. So we talked about it last week. It was an update. NYC congestion pricing is a go. It is live now, and we've already seen the backlash for it. It's been crazy. However, some locals have seen results. It's up in the air right now, but a lot of people who drive into the city are saying that their drive is easier. Some people who live in the area are videotaping the streets and saying it's less congested than it used to be. But it's January. Who knows? Traffic is often lighter in that this time of year, so I think it's going to take a few months before we actually see the results of congestion pricing. Either way, hopefully we get to that point where we actually see what happens. But if you're curious about it, I think Ray, City Nerd, just released a video on it just like a few hours ago. I haven't watched it yet. Haven't had the time, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there.
Yeah, it's a good video. He talks a little bit about the congestion pricing stuff. And I'll also say, like you said, it's early on. These things kind of take time to shake out. It's the same thing, like you open up a new lane and suddenly it's like everything's beautiful, everything's perfect again. But we'll have to wait and see how it balances out. Though I guess with actually pricing it out, you have a few more levers at your disposal to like market it in.
Have you guys seen any of the people like recording videos trying to get around congestion pricing by still bringing their cars?
No. What are people doing?
Well, one, you still have the standard covering up your license plate with the there's like these like tinted license plate covers that basically like make the opacity like dark enough to where cameras can't pick it up, but like a cop can still read the back of your plate. And then there was also another one where people were like finding parking lots on like the border streets between the congestion pricing readers and then cutting through those lots and then getting around.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure I'm sure not enough people will be able to cut through the parking lots to get around it, but that's interesting. Ethan, you've got an update for us here.
Yeah. So as of about the past 48 hours, we've seen quite a large stirring of wildfires in Southern California. These have done some pretty insane damage to the region of Southern California, especially around Malibu, Pacific Palisades, and the San Fernando Valley. And just for this episode, we're going to leave a little link and just some, help or ways that you can help out the people who are suffering from and struggling from these wildfires. I just wanted to leave that out there because this is an ongoing story. I don't really want to go too far into it, but I just wanted to say that we're going to offer ways for our fans to help out some people who are affected by these wildfires.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Ethan. And then for my update, pretty simple. This just came out today, the ruling from Court of King's Bench. There were some people, we've talked about the upzoning in Calgary. This is something a lot of cities across North America have been doing. This upzoning basically just allows people to build townhomes across the city, though it's still a discretionary use, not a permitted use. So there's still like a whole load of hurdles in the way, but people were fighting against it. They had a few different arguments they were trying to go after it with, saying that that based on the Municipal Governments Act in Alberta, that this wasn't something that the city was actually allowed to do, even though multiple cities in the province have already done it. And the Court of King's Bench ruled in favor of the city. So we'll have to see if any appeals come out of that. But yeah, that's my update. It'll be interesting to see how that story continues to develop. And Reece, maybe you have an update. Is there anything different that you've been up to lately?
So I've been sleeping. It's been nice. Besides that, not a lot has changed. I am finally off of Twitter, which is nice. I deleted the app.
That is nice.
Yesterday, and it's great. Twitter is a sewer, and social media in general is just so it's nice to be off of some social media, but socializing with all you lovely folks.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to socialize with you. I'm curious, like your Twitter use before. I'm not like a super active Twitter user. Was it like a chronic Twitter use?
It was a chronic disease. Yeah. Quite debilitating, to be honest. Especially on some days, it really flared up, and it would just be hours at a time of tweeting.
Really?
Yeah, just like, oh wow, this anime character said something offensive. Now I have to yell back at them for 3 hours, right? And argue with them. So it was really productive, and I really, when I die, I'll remember those times when I was arguing with teenagers on the internet, and I'll remember them fondly, I'm sure. So, I'm curious about like the hospice care that our generation will be receiving in the future. There will be books written about it saying, nobody ever said that they wish they spent more time on Twitter, right? On our deathbed. Well, that's good. I'm glad you got off of Twitter. Jen in the live chat says congrats on your Twitter escape. And I just want to mention the live chat here before we get into the rest of the conversation. If you want to join the live chat, you can go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism and join the 4 very cool people who are in the live chat, like Austin and Jen in there right now. But speaking of Austin and Jen and Skitch, we've got some listener questions for you. Nick, you've got a regular question that you like to kick the conversation off, so I'll let you jump into that first.
Yeah, this is always, harkening back to the roots, right? I always like to ask about the roots. I always find it interesting. So I want to ask you, Reece, like, we're coming to an end of an era for sure for yourself, but where did it all begin? Where did it start? What kind of got you into transit and urbanism in the first place?
Or YouTube? Yeah. Which one?
Well, you know what? I'll let you take the reins. Whatever you feel like talking about.
That sounds great to me, Nick. So, I grew up in Vancouver in Canada, and I rode the SkyTrain, which doesn't have a driver, so you can sit at the front. And that was probably like my first experience with trains, and it's it's invigorating. So I think riding the SkyTrain around a lot was pretty awesome. Traveled around. One of my uncles lives in New York City, and I would go and visit him and stay with him. And this was when I was like 12. I would just go ride the New York City subway around by myself, and that was awesome. And it was like, wow, this is so amazing. You can go anywhere you want at any time of day. Went to like Times Square at 11 p.m. And it took only minutes to get there on the express train. Like, wow, this is so amazing. And then just kind of like traveling to more places and seeing how many awesome cities there were and how many awesome transit systems there were, and thinking like, I have so many questions, like, why does Sydney have double-decker trains, and why does New York have these express tracks? Is that normal? Like, how do different things work? And not being maybe satisfied with the answers I could find online, I was like, I should make a YouTube channel and talk about some of these things, and like cover things I know, and then cover things that other people have discovered about their cities. And so, I decided to do that, and RMTransit was a thing from there on.
Yeah, and it's a great resource. I mean, what you're talking about not knowing, about wanting to figure out, like, what the use case is for each of these different modes, right? Like, why do they have extra tracks here? Why do they have a double-decker train? Why does this city not? Those are things that's actually how I found your channel, is because I was like thinking about transit in my city in Calgary, and thinking like, what would be like, what are the different use cases for these things, and then stumbling upon your channel in kind of my search for those. So you have fulfilled that role
good.
in that niche
Good
for
to
sure.
hear.
Yeah. Do you have kind of follow up? Do you have like a favorite mode? Like, do you have a favorite transit mode?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, like, anything with rails is kind of cool, right? But no, not really. Like, I think anything can be good, and I think that like people are a little too into what mode of transportation. Like, you get a lot of people poo-pooing buses, but like a good bus can be really good, and ultimately it's just a mode of transportation, right? If it gets you there quickly and if it's convenient, that's what matters the most, right? And then all of the other stuff, that's kind of like the back end, and it's like, how do cities implement systems that are efficient so that they can run as many trains and buses as possible, and how do they design them so they can be fast and convenient? But like at the user end, it's really just about quick, convenient, accessible, in the sense that like it's accessible to everyone, but also the sense that it literally is just available in places where people are, right? So I think it's actually pretty simple from the user's perspective, but to create a good system is quite complicated, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. Skitch in the live chat says yes, and the bus slander. Because I mean, the bottom line is we all just like, we want to get places, right? Like, am I able to get to my friend's house, my family? Can I get to work? Can I do the things that I need to do in my life? And what mode services that? Transit can fill a really big role, especially if you live in cities, but otherwise, what other options do I have, whether it's walking, biking, driving, skiing, right? Like, how do you
get the dog sled out? Let's go.
Yeah, like, I mean, how do you get around, right? There are different tools for different situations, and so when we're talking about like trains versus buses versus whatever, like the user just wants to get to where they're going. I think most people care a little bit less than some of us about how we get there. We just want to get there in a
Well, speaking of a user who does care a lot about the mode, we have Jen in the comments saying, I only ride trolleys, exclusively trolleys. Very problematic, as Calgary doesn't have any for me to get to work and run errands.
Well, you could take the trolley at Heritage Park and ride from the parking lot to the entrance of the park.
This is true.
But I think there's like a candy shop out there and a restaurant you could go to, and a car museum.
The Heritage Trolley is, it's a classic mode of transportation. Usually very useful.
Yeah.
Very useful, gets you where you need to go.
Everywhere I need to go.
In a timely manner.
Yeah. Ethan, I'll give you one question for Reece here before we get into our guest questions here.
Yeah, Reece, honestly, I am really wondering, what is something that really drove you to make content as frequently as you did? Because you had videos that came out so frequently, and it was one thing that honestly really inspired me. So I just wanted to know what really drove you to make videos as frequently as you did.
Yeah, so I mean, like, ultimately, money. No, it wasn't. It was honestly the fact that I had a lot of ideas for videos. I had like a long document. Still has a lot of ideas that I didn't end up making in that document. But there was always like another thing I wanted to talk about, and often it would be comments or things other people said that inspired me or angered me sufficiently to be like, oh, I got to make a video like debunking this notion or talking about this thing. And for a lot of big cities, like I had like a list of them. I'm like, I got to make videos about all these cities. And so that was a factor. Money was a factor too, ultimately, because YouTube was my full-time job. And so it was like, ultimately with YouTube, you don't know what paycheck you're getting at the end of the month. And so like by making more videos, you just kind of like raise the bar of what the bottom potential paycheck is going to be every month. And you also just can cover more topics. Like there was, especially when I was first posting, like a lot of the topics didn't have a lot of videos about them, and so it was sort of like, okay, I got to get like a lot of videos on a lot of topics quickly, and that was just like, make a lot of videos. I was in university when I started the channel too, so I guess I had a lot of free time, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go around, film some stuff, and then make a video, pop that out at like 1 a.m., and then do another video in 2 more days, and like it just kind of went along like that. It was, it was both out of having a lot to talk about, and also just like necessity and kind of a desire to iterate rapidly, as you're learning a lot of stuff and how to make the video better, what things you are unhappy with and you want to make better. There was like so much potential, like, okay, I got to make the next video so I can see how this would work, type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's really interesting because, like, I feel like when you get into this thing, a lot of it is reactionary. Like, a lot of the videos I've made, just reactions, exactly the same, like you said, things that people have said to me here, online comments, things in real life that I've had conversations about. But the list of things in the back burner, like, it's like however many videos you've made times whatever. That's how many you have in the back burner. It just keeps growing. It doesn't get smaller every week. It just keeps getting bigger. It's scary. It's a dragon.
Yeah, and then sometimes you go to that back burner and you're like, that's a dumb idea for a video.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to let it sit for a second. Jen has a quick follow-up questions before we get into the others. She's wondering, what were you studying in university?
So I studied computer science. So could have been a programmer, gone and done some software engineering and stuff. But I decided that seemed less interesting than making YouTube videos about trains. So I went with trains.
I think a lot of people would be inclined to agree. I'll kick us off with these listener questions here, and then we'll go to Ethan and then Nick if you guys want to take the next two. Austin asks, what would it take to get you to move to Calgary?
Nothing. I've considered moving to Calgary a lot of times. Like, I think Calgary is a perfectly nice city, and I think though that it's like poorly governed, generally speaking. I think especially like at the provincial level, it's pretty bad. But just like in general, there's like some dubious decision making that kind of goes on, widening the Deerfoot again and again, and the fact that the light rail doesn't go to the airport, I think is kind of crazy. The blue line goes right there. It feels a bit the endless sprawl. Housing is affordable in Calgary, and sprawl is very much a thing in Calgary in a way it's not in Vancouver or Toronto. But I don't think Calgary's a bad place. It's we've got a very attractive downtown. The bow is beautiful. The light rail system is a pretty good system, to be honest. It's got 2 lines. It's quite bare bones, but it moves a lot of people, or at least it has historically. And so I think Calgary's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know what? I'm inclined to agree. I don't know if anybody's ever heard me say that, but Calgary is pretty cool.
Who said that?
Wait,
have
said that?
Have I ever said that?
Also, that it should be maybe governed better. Maybe. I
100% agree.
Can we get a fact check on that one?
If you live in Ward 11, vote for this Alex Williams guy to be your city councilor starting in October.
Hey, wait a minute. This is an apolitical podcast, Alex. I don't think you could be endorsing politicians on here.
We can't officially endorse any politicians. That's true. I will say... go ahead, Reece.
I was just going to say, I also think, as a bit of an architecture nerd, it is really cool that there's a Foster and Partners designed skyscraper in Calgary, which is the Bow, which is just extremely... Calgary actually has a lot of cool skyscrapers. So as someone who's into that, it's also it's better than most cities in North America. Telesky is really cool. The Bow's really cool. Brookfield Place is actually, I think, a pretty nice looking tower.
It's a nice building, yeah. Well, you know what? This is really validating my little Calgary heart. So please feel free to dole on those Calgary compliments. I do think the skyline, Calgary skyline, is fantastic, and you would be very welcomed here, Reece. And also, before we move on from the Calgary stuff, I gotta ask too, Alberta. What do you think of the upcoming transit plans for regional rail in Alberta?
I mean, to call them plans is probably a bit of a stretch. It's just, you can want the right thing for the wrong reasons or go about it in the wrong way. And it's just provincial government in Alberta is to call them a joke would be generous. It's just like, it's chaotic.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, yeah, it's cool. You guys want trains, but I don't have a lot of confidence that you're going to build a good train. It's probably going to be a bad train if you build anything. And it's sort of like they're like, I just don't believe that they're going to do. They've released some like renders and stuff. I'll have to see if they actually do anything. But I mean, obviously, I'd be supportive of more transit. But there's just like, there's so many things they can do. So it would be in many ways it's like, there's a lot of low hanging fruit for projects to build. So
for sure.
I would be excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the master plan when it comes out this summer, and then I think that's a point where we'll be able to kind of say a little bit more, if we're optimistic or not. But yeah, all right. Well, let's get on to the next thing. Ethan, want to take?
Let's do it. Let's
question?
do it. This is a question from one of our viewers in chat, Skitch, and she asks, "What specific transit vehicle sparks the most joy for you, and why do you like it?" This could be a type of transit, like bus versus tram versus rail, or it could be a specific model of vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like for me, so I visited Sydney when I was pretty young, and if you haven't seen the Tangara, like the train, the Tangara, that's spelled Tangara, it's worth looking up. It's crazy. It's a very cool looking thing. It's just like interesting industrial design. It's got like this kind of like angled cheese grater looking front. It's just like, it's wacky and weird. I really like that. I think it's it's kind of cool and funky, and I like when cities do something like that. They have something that's distinct, doesn't feel very generic. It feels very, uniquely Sydney. So I think that's what I would say for that.
I love that. That's a great answer to that question. Nick.
Yes, we've got another one here. Or wait, you want me to answer this?
No. I don't want to hear what your favorite train is.
Yeah, I was like, you know what it is. This is another one of our patrons. Jen asks, what makes a transit system both fast and fair for everyone, especially in cities where people live really far apart and have different incomes? Are there any cities doing this really well?
Fast and fair for everyone. Well, you know what? I think ultimately that transit as a whole, existing is kind of the key thing. Like the bigger your system gets, the more different journeys it can serve. And so really the goal should just be a larger system, because like it's very hard to say that one particular journey is going to be well served by, like any particular system, other than to say like a more comprehensive system can serve more journeys, right? So like some might even argue that like I don't know, like Mexico City has a big metro network, but a lot of people, like poor people, live on the peripheries of it. And so like for them to get anywhere, it's like a very long journey. And so it's like, well, it's not fair for them because they didn't build like a express system like New York. So like, and I think that the ultimate thing is that just you've got to develop a bigger and bigger system so that it can serve more and more different use cases. And there's this idea of like suburbanization of poverty. And that's not consistent at all. Like there are some places where there is suburbanization of poverty, but some places like inner cities are really hollowed out. And so I think that it's hard to say there's a single like spatial pattern or type of transit system that is kind of like most equal or best. It's sort of just like the more comprehensive it is, the more different options people are given to get around, right? And to be fair too, like even if they have to drive, a good transit system means that the car experience has to be better, because that's what the cars are competing with is the trains and buses and stuff. And so that just makes everything a little better, a little tighter. And so I think that's kind of my answer. It's just more better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is such a good answer to that question.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Nice.
it.
And are there any cities that you think are doing this really well?
I mean, I think like Paris is great, but not super accessible. Tokyo is great, but a bit confusing and expensive. There's no perfect city, but like the cities with the most, like Tokyo and Paris, with comprehensive systems and a lot of reach, Seoul as well is really good. Those are the cities that are, I think, the best.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm curious, going off of that, what in maybe let's do Canada and the US separately.
Yeah.
But is there like a city in Canada and a city in the US that you're most impressed by their transit system?
Well, I mean, okay, so it's very interesting, right? Like I think for the U.S., right? It's hard not to be impressed by New York, right? But
Right.
it's almost like I don't even want to say New York just because it's sort of cheating. It's like
Right.
it's
a tier
such an
above.
outlier, right?
Yeah, it's the obvious choice.
But
Yeah.
it is like it's got like infrastructure that it has some really dumb stuff, but it also has like some stuff that's just like unparalleled in the world. So
Yeah.
New York is amazing, but like besides New York, I think it has to be like a smaller U.S. city, like maybe like Salt Lake City is kind of like you're like okay, like it's not world class, but
Yeah.
you can kind of see how it could be. Like if they
Surprising.
made the right decisions for the next couple decades, like they could be really really good system. So yeah, I agree, it's surprising, and like I think Portland, like if they build a tunnel downtown, like that could be a really good system. Like it could be faster and a bit more frequent. So I think that's and San Diego as well. I can tell you that most disappointing is probably like the Bay Area, just because
Right.
like it's basically the richest urban area in the history of humankind, and it's just the transit doesn't stack up when you consider that. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of much poorer cities with much better transit, and especially when I think of like all those giant tech offices in Silicon Valley, a lot of tech workers take transit, but they're all in the middle of nowhere, connected really poorly to transit instead of like, I don't know, near a Caltrain station or something. And those planning decisions, like imagine like how much of a difference they would have made for like Caltrain ridership if like Apple, Google, Meta, all these companies were on different Caltrain stations. Like that could be extremely busy. It still does well, but like those decisions matter a lot. So that's why I'd say this is a non-answer for the U.S. Just like a lot of spitballing. But for Canada, I think it's just Vancouver. Like Vancouver is so good. Montreal's good, but it has more obvious flaws to me than Vancouver, like the lack of accessibility and the fact that it's a bit fragmented. Vancouver is just like, I think Vancouver stacks up well against a lot of European and even Asian cities. It's not as big as it could be, but like the quality of the wayfinding, the frequency of the service, just the transit-oriented development's excellent. I think Vancouver is really special. So that's my Canadian city, I think.
That's awesome. That's some really good insight on both. Does anybody have any other questions for Reece before we dive into the rest of the conversation?
I did, but now it's gone.
All right.
It slipped through my brain like a sieve.
Well, we can get back into it. For the rest of this, Reece, we're going to talk about some other news stories and things.
Cool.
Nick is particularly going to lead us on the CES conversation. And feel free to jump in and just say
Tell me, Nick, you're
whatever
wrong.
you like.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Cut off Alex and me too.
Yeah, Ethan and I do the most talking, me especially. So feel
Alex,
free.
it's Alex, and then there's me, and then there's Nick.
Yeah. So
He's like the New York when it comes to talking.
yeah,
He's
it's
a
true.
tier above.
I'm an outlier, the obvious choice for who's doing the most yapping on this show. But yeah, let's get into the CES. What have you seen? What has been good? What has sucked?
Oh
maybe?
my God!
What do you think?
Okay, it's my first time coming to CES, and let me tell you, it's insane. It's insane. I've been to different trade shows, had a lot of fun, different fan expos and stuff like that. Comic-Con. I've been to Micromobility America, but this is like. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's insane. Like, I'm talking about, you're like, hey, there's Panasonic. And you keep walking, you're like, this is still Panasonic. Like, they made their own building inside the building. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I'm obviously here for Micromobility. Segway sponsored this trip for me. And I spent most of the day at their booth, which is actually really impressive. It was a lot bigger than I expected. It was really nice. And then went to a different place to try out all their new scooters. Their new two e-bikes, the Cyber and the Safari, and their scooters, oh my God, man, they've gotten so good. Like, I have a 9-bot Max, a Segway 9-bot Max I've been using for ages. It was the first thing that kind of kickstarted this whole obsession with micromobility, cycling, and urbanism, right? And to see how far they've come so quickly in the iterations with that design is amazing. Like, the new 9-bot Max, I think it's called the G3 Max, is like... wow, it's got suspension, it's quick, beautiful screen on it, turn signals, cruise control, it's comfortable, unbelievable. Anyway, they're not paying me to talk on the show, but I got other things to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about this city. I'm in Las Vegas, and I've been here before. It's been a while. And as soon as you get to the airport, you're like, this place is different. It's so
In a bad
different.
way.
in a bad way.
Excuse you. Oh man.
Holy smokes! So I've flown into many different cities in North America, around the world, and let me tell you, you go to Schiphol in Amsterdam, you can bike basically from the airport. You take the train. I've been to LaGuardia and taken City Bike into downtown Manhattan. I've been taking the Union Pearson Express in Toronto, the BART from SFO, and when I go home after this trip, I'm going to get on the SkyTrain to take me home, right? But when you come to Vegas, you can either walk half an hour to a bus stop and take another hour and a half trip on the public transit system, or take a 20-minute Uber ride that's going to cost you $60 American. This is the world they've built here. It's fucking insane. $60. That's like $90 Canadian.
Clarification.
Yes, please.
Little clarification. There is a bus that runs directly from the Strip to the airport. However, it is the Century Express, and it runs hourly.
That is...
Wow.
Or Centennial Express.
It's just absurd. And the funny thing is, it's not even a really interesting thing is if anyone knows much about Macau, which is near Hong Kong. It's also a special administrative region of China where they speak Portuguese, actually. Macau is like Vegas. They have tons of casinos all over. Like, it's the whole city is like...
It's the bigger casinos. City than Vegas in gambling. It's the only one, I believe, that does more gambling every year
which is crazy.
Than Vegas.
I didn't know that, but you learn something new every day on the Radio Free Urbanism podcast.
It's true.
The stuff part.
This is the stuff.
But they have an automated like metro system. It's a people mover, but it's just sort of like, how does Vegas not, like, it's all in a line. It's like perfect for some sort of rapid transit, and they just haven't. They have like the Deuce, right, the BRT, but it's not very good as far as I can remember from the last time I was in Vegas.
Yeah,
I don't travel often to places where transit is not great.
The Deuce runs every 5 to 10 minutes during the day, and I believe every 10 to 20 like overnight. It's 24/7, which is great. The problem is that once it gets onto Las Vegas Boulevard, there's no bus lanes, so you are at the mercy of Las Vegas Boulevard traffic.
I mean, this is rather narrow street. I don't know how you could fit bus lanes.
Yeah, no. There's no way you could possibly do that.
No room for transit.
Highly disruptive to the like the nature, the kind of like the historic nature of the street.
Yeah.
And, like the quaint environment, right? So,
I come to Las Vegas for the calming feel of Las Vegas Boulevard, and then I
lights
stroll.
on the bus. Just the lights on the bus would disrupt the whole vibe.
Yeah.
Jen in the chat says, clearly called the Deuce for a reason.
It's not. It's not great.
During peak, you can walk faster than the Deuce on Las Vegas Boulevard.
Oh
my understanding is it's just the cab lobby. That's like the reason, right? So
it is.
Vegas. It's kind of shocking because at some point, even cities that are pretty captured by the auto industry tend to realize that, like, okay, this sucks. This is so bad. Like, we have to have some better solution. And Vegas just hasn't a sufficiently large city to have realized this yet, I suppose. Even though it's growing a lot.
Well, Nick, did you take the future transportation solution of Las Vegas from the beautiful private industry?
Oh, the tunnel?
Yes.
The tunnels? What are they called?
The Vegas Loop at the moment.
The Loop. I did not. I gotta go check it out. I'll find it tomorrow. I'm sure I'll take a gander.
It's essential. That's why you used it the first day to get around.
This is true.
Yeah. It's more
wild.
of a tourist attraction than it is a transportation mode. Like it's kind of like let's go look at this weird thing they have.
I believe they have Cybertrucks in there too now, so you can have fun with that.
Oh my God.
That sounds like a great way to be injured, but
Yes.
or die in a fire potentially.
Die in a fire.
Yeah, maybe don't, Nick. Maybe just walk down to the platform, take some video, and...
It would be so much more valuable if they let people use e-scooters in those tunnels.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
That would actually be super useful. Suddenly it would actually be kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just realizing this. Wow. Okay, like, people always are bringing up, like, the tunnels. Are they big enough for a train someday? And it's like, no, actually, letting people, like, ride bikes in them could actually be very good long term, as, like, when they realize that car thing is dumb.
Put a moving walkway in there.
Yeah, at the same time, like, next to it. Yeah.
Or on it. Maybe ride the e-scooter on the moving walkway. Highly not recommended, I think.
That
sure
sounds like
would
fun.
be interesting in a tunnel.
Do a cool little ollie
No.
to pop off at the end of the moving walkway.
So tell us about the micromobility. Like you're impressed by these new e-scooters, like how far they've come. Like I kind of wonder when you're describing these with their screens and everything. Like, are we getting to the same point with micromobility that we've been at with cars, where like the screens are too big and we're like iPad kids sitting on our scooters now instead of
maybe.
in our cars?
Honestly, like the little screens on them even giving you like call notifications, which I don't think is necessarily a good idea in any device you're riding, let alone an e-scooter. Yeah, but it's interesting to see that tech make its way into there, and I was surprised that nothing on it yet said like AI powered or something, because that seems to be the theme of CES.
That's good to hear.
Right? Yeah. But I did want to talk about something a bit darker, if that's okay, and something I noticed today.
Yeah,
I really
go for
did. So first off was the whole Uber experience at the airport. They corral you off in this Jersey barrier cordon area in the parking garage, and like you have to show the guy there that your Uber driver texted you that they're here, or he will not let you pass. He's like, and he was like yelling at people, like full on, like, if you don't have a text. It was like, what? Where are we right now? It felt like some kind of, I don't want to. Anyway, it was a little scary.
It does not feel like
it wasn't dignified.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't feel civilized. It just doesn't.
Exactly. But I did take the bus this morning, the RTC, and it took an hour and 20 versus the 20-minute ride from my hotel. I'm like way on the west side of Las Vegas for whatever reason. And there's something I noticed. It was perfectly clean and fine and nice. It obviously was slower. This was like they have their own lane for the bus. This is down, I don't know the name of the street here. Anyway, something I noticed was the demographics on the bus. I was absolutely the only person that looked like me on the bus. There was no other middle-aged or young white people at all, men or women. It was black and Hispanic people, a couple old white men who looked like they might have been unhoused. And then when I got to CES, the only people I saw there were people who looked like me or Asian people. Like a lot of Japanese people were there and a lot of Chinese people. It just like that demographic shift. And the only time I saw black people or Hispanic was they were working there. And it was just so crazy to me where you can like so clearly see the divide in transportation and how this affects people. Like this is something I have to deal with for a couple days. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to Vancouver. I can walk to the things I need. I can get on my bike and go to work, whatever. It's great. But like, that's not an option. People have to live here all the time, taking the bus where other people who have money can just get to where they can go in a quarter of the time. Like that's the difference. And that's like the shit we need to work on to make better. And I think that's right to what Jen's question was about, right?
Yeah,
this was up that divide.
This was something that I had to explain to people in Vegas, in the Vegas area a lot, is that you specifically not taking the bus doesn't mean that other people aren't taking the bus. And Vegas's bus ridership for a city without any other rail transportation, we're excluding the monorail because that does not count, actually has some fairly higher ridership when it comes to its bus lines compared to other cities in the US, which doesn't mean that it's great, but it does mean that a lot of people are still riding the bus. And you would get a lot of people telling you, or I'd get a lot of people telling me that no one rides the bus, when I, as a commuter on the bus in Las Vegas, would have to tell people that a lot of people do take the bus. It's just that they aren't interacting with you.
Yeah.
Well, they're not my people.
Yeah, they're not wealthy. They're not white and
BMW
wealthy. Yeah.
people. Is what I'm saying. By that is what people are saying. Unfortunately, I think it's kind of, I think often reflective, like Nick, what you're saying. I think even in Vancouver, like a lot of wealthy people take transit. I do sort of wonder if it's just like a travel thing. If people like you travel at some point and you realize that like, no, actually driving isn't like the height of life, and that like actually like there are a lot of nice places like Switzerland. Like I haven't spent a lot of time in Switzerland, but it's a very fancy place with Rolexes and trains, and a lot of those rich people are taking trains around. it turns out like it's a nice way to travel too. If you have like, instead of segregating your entire society along the lines of transportation, if you can just have a great system that really uplifts everyone and means that like it doesn't matter like if you have a BMW when you're born, you can get the same nice way of getting around your country and your city that anyone gets. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing. Like we've talked about the perception of different modes by different people in different socioeconomic classes and things like that. People in Calgary, for example, are far more willing and interested in taking the train than in taking the bus, even though the train typically tends to see more social disorder on it, and there's a few different reasons for that, both just like a numbers situation, but also because of the access to the vehicle is different and things like that. But the train is seen as like a more comfortable, safer mode of travel as compared to the bus.
I have a theory on this. I think that 95% of that, and this kind of comes back to something you guys were talking about earlier, I think 95% of that comes back to the train runs frequently. And people often talk about like, I won't ride the bus, I'm not. And to some extent it is true that like, you have to be really down on your luck to choose like a bus that comes every 2 hours to some suburban cul-de-sac that's looping around. It's like the first thing people can do when they can afford to is buy a car, because that bus is a shitty experience. And ultimately it's sort of self-reinforcing that like, once it's not dignified for people if the service is that poor. And it's that, you're constantly late because the bus is once every 2 hours, you miss it, it's a nightmare, it's slow, it's unreliable, then it feeds on itself, like it feeds on the perception that it is second class, because it is second class. The train is fast and reliable, and the car is fast and reliable, and the bus is not, right? So I think that's a huge factor there, and it stands in a lot of cities.
Yeah. I mean, even just yesterday, my bus in my area, it's a half-hour frequency, which usually I'm pretty comfortable working with, especially most trips that I take it on. It's a one-seat ride. But yesterday, it had a 40-minute delay. All the buses on this route had been like bunched up downtown. And then I was just like, well, I'm not going out tonight. Never mind. Cancel my plans. Because suddenly, instead of coming in 3 minutes like it's scheduled to, I'm going to have to wait at least 40 minutes for this ride to get here, right? And so, it becomes an undignified way of transportation. And particularly in this case, it's because that bus rides on McLeod Trail, which is infamously Calgary's worst strode.
It's quite the strode indeed. When you build an overpasses to get the people over it, then it's not great.
Yeah. It sucks to walk there, sucks to bike, sucks to drive, sucks to be there, sucks to just hang out, do any errands there. And unfortunately, that's where so many of the things that we got to get to are. I have many things to say about McLeod Trail. I
don't want to hurt your political ambitions bashing one of Calgary's most beloved features there.
Well, I have a vision to make it better.
The pinnacle of automotive freedom.
Yeah.
If you didn't know what it was and someone's like, "Oh, we're going to McLeod Trail," you're like, "That sounds great. Let's go."
McLeod Trail, neato.
It's probably it's probably in like a park or something. Along mountain views.
Reminds me of a strode I had to go on yesterday called Barber Boulevard here in Portland, and I ran into some sidewalks that just
insufficient.
Insufficient would be an understatement. These were pretty much just gravel. Shoulders essentially.
Oh, that's rough.
Marked as sidewalks. So
I'm seeing Skitch in the live stream chat is mentioning about the Saturday and Sunday service in Phoenix, and I think this is another thing that you want to make the buses seem like a second class citizen type of thing. Don't run them after 7 p.m. Like most people stop, they are home by 7 p.m. probably sleep, right? I mean, like, who stays up past that hour? So I mean, and same with Saturday and Sunday. I mean, Sundays, that's when we go to church, right? So no one, and we don't have to get to church. I mean, the church is in our neighborhood, right? We just walk over.
Right.
So you don't need, why would you need transportation on that day? And Saturday, I mean, it's a day of rest, right? So you should really be staying home. If you have a car, though, it's okay. But
You clearly have
bus
time to
drivers-
wait. No one works on Saturdays either.
You know,
Of course.
this is the craziest thing to me about the poor hours of operation is that so many of the people who not just like choose to take transit but like rely on it actively are shift workers who work past 7 and work Saturdays and Sundays, right? And then we just say, well, actually, it's just for the commuter. I don't know what you're supposed to do, shift worker who like relies on this service, right? I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who sit at a bus stop for 45 minutes after their shift, just waiting for the bus to come and take them home, or they spend all their pennies on a car because they gotta get to work. And so that's a big part about needing to actually have like full services.
It's pretty like, as someone who did ride some pretty crappy suburban buses in my day, like when I went to high school, I was like the only person taking the bus, and I remember like it's pretty like kind of humiliating standing at the side of the street, everyone's driving by you, right? There's no there was no shelter at my bus stop, so sometimes it would rain and I just like try to stand close to a pole so that like maybe the pole will catch some of the rain if it's blowing to the side, right? Like that's pretty undignified and embarrassing, and like you have that experience a few times, and if you have the choice, you're like, okay, I'm finding a new way to get to school or to work because it's just you feel like not even an important or not even part of your society. So
Exactly.
I also understand that too, but in the complete opposite direction of waiting at a bus stop in summertime in Las Vegas when it is like 40 plus degrees Celsius outside.
You need La Sombrita.
This is true. I do need La Sombrita. The greatest shelter ever devised. Thank you, LA Dot, for that.
What is this? Sombrita?
Oh, it's
La Sombrita is quite the transit innovation. Brought to you, by the Los Angeles Department of Transportation.
It's like
it's a sign. What is it?
What?
No, it's a shelter system, an
with
advanced
a light.
shelter system. Yeah.
Is this? Am I looking at the right thing? Is this for reals?
Pull it up on screen.
La Sombrita is the source of much joking on the internet.
This is, oh my goodness! I can't believe I've never heard of this. This is the thing you guys are talking about.
Is that
Isn't
shade
it
for
beautiful?
one person when the
Isn't it
sun's in the right
perfect?
direction?
This is.
It's the prevailing direction of the sun, so I mean, like, it's gonna be it's amazing.
Oh my, this is awful. Jeez.
This actually makes transit in LA great. When they introduced this, it was a serious life changer for people, for one of the people using this bus stop every day.
Yeah.
And they had a whole opening event too for it, which was great.
I want to know how much money they actually spent on this.
I think it was a scandal. Was that they spent tons of money like developing La Sombrita.
It was
Oh my God.
It was something like $80,000, I think, to develop this.
Oh man, that's crazy. Well, I love stuff like that. We've got a hard stop coming up here, so I want to get into a couple final questions our listeners send in. These are more general questions. We'll each answer these. This first one's from Jan Hall, friend of the show. Ethan, do you want to ask us this question?
Yes, of course. Jen asks us, if you could invent something to showcase at CES, what would it be?
This is an interesting question. I think Nick should be the first here.
Yes, I will talk more about CES next week because I'm still here for tomorrow. I got lots to see. But if I could invent something for CES, it would be an actual hoverboard. Not that I could invent that, but if it's possible, if I could make that happen and make the Back to the Future hoverboard, it's actually floating above the ground like a skateboard but without wheels. That's the one. By the way, there was a DeLorean at I saw that today at CES. That was cool. But yeah, that definitely sparked that.
That is super cool. Reece, do you have something in mind that you
still
would
pondering?
invent? Yeah.
Pondering.
I'll say mine. I would invent an e-bike that at the same time, since Nick said hoverboard, I'm like, okay, anything's on the table here. I would invent an e-bike that would like install a bike lane as it goes. Like it would just be really simple.
Wallace and Gromit style.
Wallace and Gromit style. Like it's putting out the barriers as it goes. Especially there's a lot of places where we should have bike lanes, and there's space for bike lanes, and you wouldn't be disturbing anybody. that would be really easy to just set that forth on and do it on the cheap. The city wouldn't need to pay a dime. It would just be there and be usable for everyone in the area. Ethan, Reece, what do you guys think? You got anything?
I'm going to go with the evil solution here, but also the good one, where it is a bike light, but not just a normal bike light, because when you turn it on a car parked in a bike lane, it just eviscerates it, like that MTA bus enforcement lane camera. Yeah.
Oh,
that.
yeah, their little meme videos that they have. Yeah, I like that. Reece.
I mean, I think it's hard to match the level of innovation that's been presented here, but I think I don't know. I think like some sort of like foldable e-bike or something that's really compact and really lightweight. You know, I think that would be quite a game changer. Or even honestly, I guess this would be like some cool new bike sharing dock system that's better than the ones we have now, that maybe more reliable or something. Extremely boring, but like functional and electronic. So
which maybe charges the bike, but just by docking it. That's what we need.
We have that.
Really?
Montreal has it. Toronto definitely has it. I don't know if Vancouver has it, but the e-bikes, like certain docks will charge them now.
That's awesome. That's
pretty
fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah. I feel like that'd be something like if I was building an e-bike share system, that would be like a no-brainer. Is like it's got to charge. I think this is fantastic. This is good. We've got another comment. Nick, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, this is an update. It was we talked about Ottawa, and I might have suggested, it's like some backwater crap hole, and they don't exist or something. I don't know what I said last week. I can't remember.
Ottawa's a pretty nice city. What the hell?
Yes, but
Reece is gonna fight you, man.
Dottis Laurie again commented. Ottawa is the 4th largest city in Canada, but you described it as a small city. I don't know if they said it in that way, but that's how I'm interpreting it. So I apologize. Ottawa is a pretty big city. I haven't spent any time there, and I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Okay, I'm sorry.
People are very. When the thing that consistently enraged people the most when I was making YouTube videos was when I would call something a small, medium, or large city, and their scale of cities did not align with mine, and they couldn't imagine that, like, my city in Europe is not a small city. It's among the 30 biggest cities in my province of Belgium. It's like. It's okay. Everyone has a different perspective on the scale of things. Relax.
Yeah,
and then you have like a 5th-tier city in China that has like 5 times the amount of people that any city in that country has.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing. Like, it is like such a perspective thing. I remember somebody got after me about the way that I used the word suburb, talking about suburban Calgary, and somebody said, well, if it's part of the actual municipal government, then it's not a suburb. I'm like, well, I think we might be using this word differently.
That's just technically wrong.
That's what I thought, but different people have different definitions. It's the same with like city sizes, right? Like,
you can watch like philosophers argue about what truth is, like like you can get any sense of reality, right?
Right.
So I guess
Well,
if you're arguing about what is a big city or small city, whether or not Ottawa is a shithole, we can go all day about that.
Yeah, and
could any city with okay, I'm trying to think of something notable about Ottawa.
That's very telling.
Any city with a train network so reliable be called shitty?
Ottawa, we have a train.
We have a train.
Of all the trains I've seen, that was one of them.
Yeah.
A train of all time, yeah.
One of the trains of all time. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for joining us, Reece. We're gonna
be here.
Wrap her up here. What do the people follow you now? Is that an option? Are you active anywhere?
People can follow me. They may choose to. I'm honestly mostly trying to post on Mastodon because I'm like, if I'm gonna be on social media, I'm gonna try to like not be on Jack Dorsey's new thing or on Elon Musk's sewer system, even though I think sewer infrastructure is very interesting. So yeah, I mostly post on Mastodon, and I'm also on Instagram because Mark's got to get his training data for his image generation AI somewhere. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Well, you know what? I look forward to your new channel, RM Sewers, coming out someday.
It's going to be incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Here are the top 10 best sewer systems on planet. You know what? Actually, this would be
Holy
interesting. I'm into it. I'm very.
If you don't know about really cool. If you don't know about the water supply tunnels to New York City, they're really cool. They literally built. They're like over 100 miles long, and they like took decades and decades to construct, and they're like some of the longest tunnels in the world. So actually, yes, water is pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I've got something else to look up. Ethan, where can the good people find you?
Well, I'm appearing to have a trying to reconnect issue, but the good people can find me over on Climate and Transit on pretty much any platform.
Excellent. And Nick?
Oh, you know where you can find me. Instagram, Blue Sky, and of course YouTube. At Nick the Door. My name is Nick Laporte. And Alex, where can the good and the bad people find you?
Yeah, the good and the bad people, and honestly, like the middling people too. You can find me on YouTube and Instagram at Humane Cities or Alex Williams YYC on pretty much all of the above. This was fun. This was grand and groovy. We just lost Ethan, so we'll do our quick little wrap up here. Nick, hit us with your catchphrase.
Well, I just want to say, Reece, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. And if anybody didn't understand all of the sarcasm, you just got to get a bit deeper in this stuff. There's some deep jokes there. But anyway, two wheels good.
And fee first.